Hi everyone and welcome to 5 Paisa. मैं हूं कुशाल भागी. Gold prices soared to an all-time high this week on February the 20th as concerns over US President Donald Trump's tariff policies fueled fears of inflation and a potential global trade war. Now, अगर इस साल में का ट्रेंड देखें तो गोल्ड प्राइसेस में 12% का अपटिक हुआ है एंड गोल्ड प्राइसेस ने रिपीटेडली रिकॉर्ड्स ब्रेक किए हैं. All this amid escalating geopolitical and economic uncertainties. Now, ऐसी uncertain market में typically gold का uptrend strong रहता है. तो क्या gold current level से और ऊपर जा सकता है? Is it too late to invest or is it not very late to invest as well? And why just physical gold? Gold ETF के बारे में आज डिटेल में डिस्कस करेंगे राहुल खेतावत के साथ. Since 361 has just this week launched a new gold ETF. So please Rahul Khetawat, welcome to the show from 361.
Thanks, Kushal.
Great. और उनके साथ पे गोल्ड पे holistic discussion के लिए we've also invited Sheela Kulkarni. Sheela is the head of market development and institutional investor relationships from the World Gold Council. Now, the World Gold Council organization champions the role that gold plays as a strategic asset, shaping the future of a responsible and accessible gold supply chain. Welcome to the show, Sheela.
Thank you.
Great. शीला तो आपके साथ शुरू करते हैं. President Trump के tariff policies, conflicts between countries, oil prices में fluctuation. Now हम अक्सर देखते हैं ऐसी situation में gold prices को climb करते हुए. So you want to start the show by explaining to our viewers particularly कि geopolitical events किस तरह gold को impact करते हैं.
Sure. So I think एक चीज हमको सबको शायद मालूम भी होगी, लेकिन ध्यान में ये रखना है कि gold is a dual nature asset in the sense that it is used for jewelry, which is consumption, and it is used for investment. And you also have gold getting used in technology. Central banks are also buying gold. Now, what happens is because it has dual nature, and it is also accepted universally, regardless of which geography, which country you are in. Gold is gold, right? It's not equities which are probably available only in one market versus not available in another market. Gold is a very different asset class. But besides that, it is also a safe haven asset. Now, Trump has assumed his presidency in late January, but the primary agenda that we see is the America First agenda, and I think that what happens in geopolitical issues, whether it's the Israel-Hamas war or the Russia-Ukraine crisis, volatility in equities go up, and people want a safe haven asset. That's where gold comes into play, and we've seen historically, whether you take the Gulf War of the 90s, the 9/11 bombings, इन सब periods में एक asset जिसने perform किया है वो था gold, क्योंकि gold के universal role है और it's a dual use asset, right? Like I mentioned, it's used as a consumption asset for jewelry, adornment, and for investment purposes, and its multiple roles in the economy. There is a flight to safety. That's where we see gold actually panning out, and in terms of its use as a safe haven asset going up.
Okay, thanks for that intro. राहुल, अगर गोल्ड इन्वेस्टमेंट की बात करें तो 361 का गोल्ड ETF इस वीक लॉन्च हुआ है. So you want to tell us what makes gold ETFs the modern investment vehicle when compared to other more traditional ways of investing in gold?
Yeah, so basically the traditional ways of investing in gold is like Sheela mentioned, the jewelry, coins. So this traditionally people are aware of and regularly buy it. So idea of buying them is largely to have it as a asset, or then they want to use it as a consumption. So what ETF makes what ETF create difference here is ETF is largely the professionally managed vehicle, and the biggest risk of having a gold is how to store it, how to keep it in a house, because the safety is a concern there. And going and buying with the jeweler is also a pain because you don't know the price. So basically, the ETF is a cost efficient safety with a high level of safety, and also provides you the long-term stable returns, and that is why it's a modern investment vehicle for investments.
Okay. You know, शीला, जो लोग सालों से फिजिकल गोल्ड खरीदते आ रहे हैं उन्हें आप क्या कहना चाहेंगे? बिकॉज in India many households view gold as a necessity for occasions like weddings, for example. So how do you think that gold ETFs fit into this more traditional mindset that we may have?
So it's a very good question. Culturally, Indians have been buying gold for centuries. We have, various gifting occasions. Grandparents, great grandparents have also passed down gold to some families, and we also have festivals like Akshay Tritiya and Dhanteras, which are, special occasions when it's considered auspicious to buy gold. Now, Indians typically have been buying gold in the form of jewelry because access to bank accounts, a few years ago was not universal. Since the Jan accounts became prevalent, we have seen a lot of people actually getting into the formalized means of saving. But till then, gold was the first step of ladder in terms of your savings in financial assets. Now, as Rahul also mentioned, storing gold can be an issue. Whether you store it in your house and run the risk of theft, चोरी भी हो सकती है घर में रख के, या बैंक लॉकर में देंगे तो आपको बैंक चार्जेस भी पे करने पड़ेंगे. तो अगर आप ये रिस्क देखें तो एक एसेट क्लास अभी जो आया है 2007 से, वो है गोल्ड ईटीएफ्स. एंड आपको, मतलब हर इन्वेस्टर को आपको ये पूछना पड़ेगा अपने आप से कि आपको फिजिकल डिलीवरी चाहिए क्या. अगर घर में शादी त्योहार है तो ऑब्वियसली आप ज्वेलरी खरीदोगे, लेकिन अगर आपको सिर्फ सेविंग्स के लिए गोल्ड चाहिए तो फिर बार्स, कॉइन्स, ईटीएफ्स ऐसे प्रोडक्ट्स यूजफुल हो जाते हैं. एंड अगर आपको लॉन्ग टर्म के लिए चाहिए, आपको अगर स्टोरेज का झंझट नहीं चाहिए, तो फिर एक ये प्रोडक्ट है ईटीएफ, जिसमें आपको स्टोरेज तो डीमैट में हो सकता है, ईज ऑफ होल्डिंग आ जाएगा, रेगुलेटेड प्रोडक्ट है तो बाइंग और सेलिंग आप एक्सचेंज पे कर सकते हो डायरेक्टली, प्राइस ट्रांसपेरेंसी मिलेगी और लिक्विडिटी भी आसानी से मिलेगी. सो आई थिंक दीज आर सर्टन फैक्टर्स दैट यू नीड टू कंसिडर. अगर डीमैट अकाउंट नहीं भी है तो आजकल फंड ऑफ फंड भी है जिसमें आप गोल्ड ईटीएफ्स खरीद सकते हो, या मल्टी एसेट फंड है जिसमें भी गोल्ड ईटीएफ्स होते हैं. तो आपके पास ये ऑप्शंस है, लेकिन हर इन्वेस्टर को पूछना पड़ेगा अपने आप से कि आपको गोल्ड किस लिए चाहिए. जैसे मैंने कहा, शादी त्योहार में तो आपको ज्वेलरी काम आएगी, लेकिन अगर आपको सेविंग्स चाहिए, आपके बच्चों के एजुकेशन अगर 10 साल के बाद यूनिवर्सिटी में जाने वाले हैं, तो उस समय आपको लिक्विड एसेट चाहिए, वो ईटीएफ की तरफ से आपको मिल जाएगा.
Fair enough. And Rahul, let's talk more about the investment aspect of gold, right? If we were to make a case for gold as a predominant asset class for investment purposes, then how does it compare to other asset classes? You can talk to us and share your insights in terms of long-term returns, in terms of risk. So just as we evaluate other asset classes, if we had to evaluate gold, where would gold stand on those fronts? Rahul, you're on mute. Rahul, I think you're on mute. So if you can just unmute yourself. Yeah, and you can start from the beginning once again.
So if you talk about the asset classes, so traditionally what we have seen is Indians are largely prefer gold, real estate, and now recently they have started equities as a preferred asset classes to invest. And if you see the very long-term return of all these three assets, like real estate, equities, and gold. So equities certainly has the highest return, which is roughly around 15% CAGR for the period of 20 years. And gold is not lagging a lot. Gold also has an offered a return of around 12.5% over a period of 20 years. And with the highest safety, so you'll not see the larger drawdown where the prices are correcting and you have an uncertainty of getting your money back. So that way, gold is a much safer and a linear return asset class. So, and with the ETF, it makes more efficient because a person is buying a gold for you, is storing it for you. You don't have a hassle of storing it. You don't have a hassle of trading it. We just need to pay money upfront on the exchange, like buying a share, and it will get credited to your demat account and enjoy the benefits of the prices. So it's really a big and a great product to have in a portfolio of any investor.
So what you're trying to say, if I can sum up, is that the returns are very competitive, but the drawdowns compared to especially equity जैसे asset class में वो काफी कम होते हैं.
Yeah,
Is that a good?
yeah. Because
Okay.
because why we want to put money in gold? Because we want, in the event of crisis, we
Hmm.
want money in the event of crisis. Like if we have some war, some calamity, like COVID-like event. So gold has a store of value. It doesn't lose value at the event of crisis. So
Hmm.
that is what it makes a. So that's why we don't see the larger drawdown at the event of crisis. Equity will
Okay.
equity will give you return at good times.
Hmm.
Everything is good, has to be good. But gold, it will give you a return even in a bad times, and your money is protected. It's easily you can go on exchange and sell it. In the like COVID, one has a money in equities and one has a money in gold. The person who has a money in gold was calm, composed because he know he has a money in like anything. So I would it's really a great product to have and one should always have in a portfolio.
Okay, we'll talk more about that, of course, as we get into this discussion. But शीला, मुझे आपका perspective चाहिए from the position that आप बैठे हो. You know, amongst the biggest buyers of gold globally, central banks होते हैं, right? And you want to explain to our viewers that why do central banks like buying gold? Why do they accumulate gold in their reserves? So just take simple सा explanation अगर आप दे सकते हो, maybe our viewers would appreciate that perspective that you bring.
Sure, it's a very good question. So on an average जो गोल्ड का टोटल डिमांड है एनुअली वो करीबन 3,000 टन है. उसमें से 20% डिमांड ये सेंट्रल बैंक से आता है. Now central banks traditionally have in their reserves US dollar. But looking at an increasingly complex geopolitical and financial environment, having gold reserves is more relevant for all central banks. In fact, we do an annual survey of all central banks, and we have observed that most of the central banks have responded to say that they intend to increase their gold reserves in the next 12 months. And we started this survey in 2018, and we have seen progressively almost all central banks adding to their reserves, including RBI, which added about 73 tons last year, and currently, I think about 11% of the reserves is in gold. Now, the planned purchases are typically motivated by a desire to rebalance to a more strategic level of gold holdings, financial market concerns, including higher crisis risk, higher inflation, and we think that gold actually serves the purpose for which these central banks are buying gold. So it makes it more relevant for them to have gold in their portfolios. And we've seen record purchases since 2022. Um, 2024 alone, 1,045 tons were purchased by all central banks put together.
That's a
I
fairly
will,
big number. Okay.
Yes.
मैं भी कुछ ऐड करना चाहूंगा इसमें.
जी
So
जी बोलिए
basically,
बोलिए.
so why the central banks are buying? De-dollarization is also the one reason. So because after the Russia-Ukraine war, the US frozen the dollar assets of Russia. So that is around $300 billion, and they are not able to use it. So this is the biggest concern among the rest of the countries, and they are not. And trade war is also the reason. So they don't want to keep their money in the dollar assets, and that's why they are selling the dollars and buying the gold. And they are also that's why the gold prices are also going up, and that is also the primary reason in nowadays where the central banks are buying a gold.
Correct. काफी relevant point आपने actually बताई है. Rahul, when it comes to the 361 gold ETF, right now, आपका NFO डॉक्यूमेंट कहता है कि गोल्ड ETFs को exchanges पे आसानी से ट्रेड किया जा सकता है. So obviously we are focusing on the liquidity benefits that gold ETFs brings to an investors, the Amuran. Can you explain a little bit how this liquidity helps investors in emergency situations when compared to, let's say, selling physical gold?
Yeah. So basically, ETF has to be mandatorily listed on the exchanges. So it's like a shares, equity shares. So if your ETF is listed on NSE, so it is like you go on the exchange, log in your trading account, and just buy or sell. It's like as convenient as like having a tea at home. So आपको बाहर नहीं जाना है, आपको किसी ज्वेलर के पास नहीं जाना है, आपको जस्ट अपना ट्रेडिंग अकाउंट ओपन करना है या अपने ब्रोकर को कॉल करना है टू बाय है. एंड लिक्विडिटी इज वेरी हाई इन दिस प्रोडक्ट because it's a widely traded product. So, and there is also like you not need to negotiate a price with the jeweler. That is the biggest pain. So if the price in the jeweler in the market is 86,000, jeweler may quote you 80, 87, 88. You don't know the right price. But at the ETF in the live market, you will get the fair price, and that is the right price. So it makes a very convenient. It creates a very big convenience for the customers and then investor, and automatically get dematted to your demat account. You not need to carry it from the market to the home and then store it in the locker. You'll have to pay the locker charges again to keep it safe. But here, the demat account custody is taking care of everything. The fund manager is managing the when to buy, when to sell, and so it's the one-stop shop for your gold investments and a great product.
Yeah, okay. So again, makes a lot of sense here what you're saying, Rahul. Um, Sheila, I want to come back and ask you one question again from a WGC, from a World Gold Council perspective. How do you all look at the long-term outlook of gold? You want to share with us that view?
Sure. So long-term outlook for gold would depend on multiple factors. One is the demand, but the second is also the supply. And within demand, we think demand that comes from fabrication or jewelry would have a major impact in the sense that if price levels remain high, then demand could be challenged, and we think overall jewelry demand could be lower. Investment demand, whether it's through lower interest rates, richly valued equities, weak dollar, ongoing geopolitical risk, all of these could provide a tailwind for investment demand. Rate uncertainty in the US is also likely to keep the bond equity correlation elevated, which would pan out positive for gold. The second aspect is central bank demand. 2024 proved to be a solid year, but we are a little cautious in terms of the potential downside risk, given that if prices remain high, then we may not see the same level of demand. On the supply side, higher margins always serve as an incentive for mine production strength to continue. Recycling is also trending higher and expected to increase again. So these factors would determine the outlook for this year.
Okay. um, राहुल मैं आपसे एक थोड़ा इम्पोर्टेंट सवाल पूछना चाहता हूँ लार्जली फ्रॉम एन इन्वेस्टर पर्सपेक्टिव ओके बिकॉज डेटा बताता है कि गोल्ड हैज ए -0.10 correlation with the BSE 500 total returns index, which is equities, and -0.02 with the Nifty Composite Debt Index, right? तो मेरा सवाल आपसे ये है is that इस लो correlation को इन्वेस्टर्स अपना पोर्टफोलियो डाइवर्सिफाई करने के लिए यूज कैसे और क्या कर सकते हैं?
So basically, when we talk about the diversification, so we always look for a low correlated product. So like if you have 100 rupees to invest, so what you would like to do is you will put 50 in equities. If you are a younger like 30s, 40s, you will put 50, 60 in equities, 20 in 20, 30 in debts, at least 20 in gold. Reason being, it provides you the safety and it has a low correlation with equities, like we discussed in the event of COVID, in the event of Russia-Ukraine war, where the equity got crashed. But gold, since the gold has a value of store, its price remain intact. It didn't collapse. So your 20 rupees is as safe as like everything. So you are not in the event of crisis, it gives you the safety plus returns. So that way, it's we always look for a low correlated product when we talk about the diversification. And since it's a in the because gold performs largely in an event of crisis, in an event of war, in an event of trade ban or trade now the trade wars, de-dollarization theme. So all these events are negative for equities, positive for gold. Low correlation makes a perfect healthy and a healthy product for an investment.
ओके तो राहुल क्या हम ये भी कह सकते हैं, जस्ट टेकिंग योर कॉन्वर्सेशन एंड योर पॉइंट फॉरवर्ड, कि अगर देयर इज एन इक्विटी इन्वेस्टर जो कि काफी अग्रेसिव इक्विटी इन्वेस्टर है, राइट, a large portion of their investment are in equity as an asset class, तो मे बी एक केस बनता है फॉर देम टू हैव अ लिटिल बिट हायर एक्सपोजर टू गोल्ड कंपेयर्ड टू अ वेरी कंजर्वेटिव इन्वेस्टर जो मेजॉरिटी अगर उनके इन्वेस्टमेंट फिक्स्ड डिपॉजिट्स में है और इन डेट फॉर एग्जांपल, वहां थोड़ा लोअर हो सकता है. Is that a reasonable point to make?
Yeah. So basically, that is also a correlated to the economic activity of a country. In an event of war, in an event of crisis, in an event of natural calamity, and everything, that will also not perform. So getting money from the debt product also became challenging. The gold again, it's a store of value, so it didn't lose value. So that way, one should always have some or other exposure based upon the risk profile in the gold. And to have that exposure, the ETF is the best product because it is an investment product. To keep jewelry, if you want to keep it in the form of bars, coins, jewelry, creates a risk. You get you may have some like chances of theft, and that again leads to a problem in life. So, but ETF is like as good as money, but stored properly and safely, and can be used at a time of adverse market situation.
Understood. Fair enough. Now, Sheela, मैं आपके पास वापस आने वाला हूँ just for this one point because we are talking about the prices of gold. Okay. Last, especially I think 2 years में we've seen tremendous increase in gold prices. What are the key factors driving gold prices in global markets?
This is a good question. जैसे कि मैंने पहले बताया कि gold has a dual nature. एक तो it's an investment asset, but it's also a consumption product. Now, most investors think about gold, they think from an investment perspective, where price discovery happens, and in the short term, investment-driven variables are going to affect and influence gold quite a bit. But in the long term, it's the interaction between the consumer side and the investment side that determines performance. So, for example, you need to understand, how much of gold's long-term performance is going to be affected by consumption patterns, and also, from a supply side, how this affects, gold's performance. So, on an annual basis, we refer to this as an identified demand, and which we think annually is in the range of 3,100 tons. But both the investment side and the consumption side actually drive prices in global markets.
Okay, because I think gold historically has shown what I think last 3 years 20% CAGR, last 5 साल में 15% CAGR, which is जो काफी surprise होता है actually when you go back and you look at this, because you don't expect these kind of such strong returns. But राहुल, like जैसे हम लोग बोलते हैं equities में ना, अगर आपको invest करनी हो तो 5 to 7 years minimum time horizon रखना चाहिए. Is there any optimal time horizon for investing in a gold ETF, for example?
So basically, I will not say you should keep any time horizon. What you should do is, since you are doing it a diversification in a portfolio, so as and when you require the money, you should sell it. Otherwise, you should continue to add it. There is no reason to sell the gold. Because if you see the 20-year returns, it is 12.5% CAGR. If you'll see the last 5-year returns, money got doubled even in gold. From 42,000 of the COVID burst, so now it is trading at 86,000 rupees. So with a high level of stability and certainty, and product like gold is doubling your money in 5 years, so which is a phenomenal return. So I would rather, instead of timing it, don't go for timing, don't go for anything. You just keep your money, park your money, let the environment, let the economies and countries do their work. The money is safe, sound, and growing like any other asset class with a higher level of stability. And I would say, if you are doing it for diversification, go for just hold it endlessly, and as and when you need a money, you just sell it.
तो आप एसेट एलोकेशन बेसिकली प्रीच कर रहे हो दैट अगर आपका 5% या 10% एलोकेशन गोल्ड रहता है, देन कीप इट एट दैट परसेंटेज. ऑब्वियसली आप बकेटिंग करो, that as and when you need it, you can sell and etc. But keep it as part of your long-term portfolio. आप वो बता रहे हैं.
Don't see the prices. Prices 86,000, 90,000. It will continue to grow, come down. If you go and time it, you may go wrong like equities. You just park your money and forget it. Let other things.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense as well. So, Sheila, I'm going to come to you. Tell us, why is gold actually considered a hedge against inflation and economic uncertainty? Because I think Rahul's presentation also shows that gold beat inflation in last 8 out of 10 years, right? Now, ऐसे में अगर आप देखो तो current economic environment में कैसे गोल्ड एक इफेक्टिव हेज होता है, काम कैसे करता है अगेंस्ट इन्फ्लेशन? सिर्फ वो बात थोड़ा अगर समझा सके तो दैट वुड बी नाइस.
Sure, this is a good question. See, gold is a global asset, and it's not hedged against just the price of goods and services, but also against the erosion of purchasing power in general. So, whether it is property, collectibles, financial assets, none of which actually appear in CPI indices. Um, Sizable proportion of gold demand is also driven by consumers, and this impacts prices over a long term. Um, Money supply is closely linked to the nominal GDP growth and is a reflection of this important consumption dynamic as well as inflation. So it gives a correlation, closer correlation with the gold price. Now, if you look at historical data, we've seen that gold offered attractive returns during, uh, monetary tightening cycles, even in India. And for investors, a source of return and effective diversification, just like Rahul has been mentioning. So periods of high rates, even historically, and high inflation. In these periods, also gold has generated attractive returns relative to stocks and bonds, and has improved, risk-adjusted returns for Indian investors.
So I would like to make some points here.
बोलिए.
So whenever we have an economic crisis, so what we have seen is central banks comes and print the currency. So at that time, what happens is the inflation comes. We see the higher commodity prices, higher demand as asset prices goes up, and that brings the inflation. And in those times, eventually after the printing of the currency, what central bank do is, because largely the earlier the currency used to be pegged with the gold. They, after printing the currency, they go and buy gold. Like what is happening after the COVID, they printed lots of currency. Now they are buying gold regularly in 3-4 years. They are covering up. So that take the prices, gold prices up, because the bulk of the demand is coming from the central banks. So that keep the prices higher. If the inflation is 6-7% in India and gold prices are going up 12%, so anyways that is protecting you against the inflation and give you the alpha over the inflation. That way we
Right.
can say it's a hedge against inflation. Naturally, your prices value is protected. You have a money, and that is not losing value.
Fair enough. Good combined answer दोनों को मिला के. Rahul, let's come back to your ETF again. Okay, आपका scheme mention करता है एक tracking error in replicating domestic gold prices, and tracking error is a pretty common aspect when it comes to ETFs. तो आप बताना चाहेंगे viewers को as to what causes this tracking error, and does it impact retail investors really?
So basically, tracking error is nothing but the cost of transacting the ETF gold cost of transacting the gold in form of ETFs basically. So basically, if I simplify this, what a fund does when he gets money, so he go to the market and buy gold. That physical gold stored in the vaults. So everything has a cost. So running a fund has a cost. Buying a gold, there is also chances during there may be a time where you're not getting at a good price. So that brings a tracking error. Storage costs bring the tracking error. So all the aspect of the cost that is that is related to storing the gold, transacting the gold, brings a tracking error into the fund. So basically, for the retail perspective, a fund which has a low tracking error is a good fund there, because its eventual cost of having a gold in the portfolio substantially come down. The tracking error is nothing but the cost that investor pay to hold the gold.
पर ये बड़ा large cost तो नहीं होता ना, at least from a retail investor
No, it's not
perspective.
a
It's a
subscription.
minuscule.
Yeah, it's like 50 paisa, 38 paisa, 40 paisa.
Okay.
Larger the
That's
fund is, the lower the tracking error.
Understood. I think the last point on ETFs, and again, maybe Sheela wants to take this question or Rahul can take this question. I want to talk about the taxation aspects of gold ETFs. And अगर हम compare करें physical gold से across different holding periods, आप उस पे कुछ बताना चाहोगे?
See, last year government brought about some changes in taxation for gold ETFs, and what it means is that basically, if you hold a ETF for more than 12 months, then the taxation is at 12.5%. Anything less than 12 months, the taxation will be as per your income tax slab rate. And this change is going to be effective from 1st of April. So it's a big difference because until last year, what had happened was gold ETFs were clubbed with debt funds, and it basically meant that you would be taxed as per your income tax slab rate regardless of the period of holding. So this is bringing it on par with equities, which makes a big difference in terms of how investors actually look at their returns and also managing their portfolios when it comes to gold vis-a-vis equity and debt.
So,
Okay, great. Great. I think we are coming to the end of this show. So maybe some closing remarks, especially I think from the perspective of gold as an investment, right? I think that is something that maybe retail investors अभी more and more interest है to have gold as part of their portfolios. So ladies first, we'll start with you, Sheela. Any closing words to investors, any advice that you have from them, and then Rahul, you can take over.
Sure. So, I think if you look at gold as an asset class within a portfolio, gold definitely improves risk-adjusted returns. It reduces the volatility in the portfolio, and like Rahul mentioned, the annualized returns go up, but the maximum drawdowns are also lower. So, having gold in a portfolio makes sense, and the more riskier the assets you have in your portfolio, the more gold you should allocate.
so
Rahul,
yeah. So basically, I would like
closing
to say
remarks.
on the taxation part first. So, like gold has government has simplified the taxation on the gold ETF. So, if you hold it for beyond 12 months, it comes under the long-term capital gain, and anything below that, it will be a short-term capital gain taxed upon the income tax slab. So, I will always recommend buy gold in the ETF form and hold it endlessly, sell as and when required. Don't try to time the market. Prices will come down, go up. Everything will happen. But it is an excellent product. It has never lose value, and even in future, it will never lose value because we have seen so much of disruption around the world. Trade wars are happening. De-dollarization is a theme. So it will protect you against the uncertainty and the uncertain times of your life cycles. So one should always invest in gold. You should always keep at least 15-20% of your asset allocation in gold, and that will you will get a tremendous amount of return on this.
Okay, मैं एक बात मेरे clarification के लिए again on the taxation, because taxation just is always confusing. Above 1 year it's 12.5%.
Yeah.
More
Yeah.
than 1 year.
Yes.
And less than 1 year, अगर आप 6 महीने के बाद ETF बेचे तो
So it comes to your income tax slab.
Yeah.
जो आपका income tax slab है, highest उस पे वो tax होता है.
Okay, fantastic. Sheela, Rahul, many dhanyavads for sharing your insights on this show, and Rahul, all the best to 361 for your NFO. Wish you all the best.
Thanks.
To all our viewers as well, dhanyavad देखने के लिए, and stay tuned for more content from 5 Paisa.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kushal.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sheila.
Rahul. Thank you.